for the captain, Tyler Adams. Mr. McKay, Jess making a big run. It's meant for him. Jess is stuck in behind. Jess into the middle. Pulitzer scores! Might have paid the price, but the U.S. takes the lead.
Well, let's see if this ball, if Serginho Dest is onside, top of the screen, absolutely is. And as the ball comes across, it's Captain America to the rescue for the United States. And he runs right into the goalkeeper at the end of this, but lays it all on the line for his team and for his country, and gets his moment. Assist in the first game. And then a goal here with the United States tournament at stake. And it's Christian Pulisic. Right place, right time, and what a header. So brave to get there first. The acceleration through. It takes the knee.
Fantastic moment there from Christian Pulisic, putting the United States into the round of 16 for the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to 100 Years of the NFL, a historical journey. Alex Kristen, Billy McGee here once again live here on YouTube tonight. Billy, what an incredible opening group stage so far. Still one more day of group stage games tomorrow before the round of 16 officially begins. But first and foremost, how was your Thanksgiving weekend overall?
It was pretty good. I mean, probably other than Thanksgiving, obviously, we had the huge game between USA and England on Friday after that, which was 0-0 draw, but I mean, it was still fun. And then obviously on Thanksgiving being with family, and then football all day long. And they have World Cup games on Thanksgiving too, so pretty good. How was yours?
It was really good. I was able to spend some time with one of my dad's friends from his school on Thanksgiving. Them inviting us over to their house was great. Unfortunately, we had the Giants game on, and there was a bit of a bitter frustration seeing the Giants lose to Dallas the way they did. But we'll certainly have the NFL to talk about in just a little bit here. Let's go ahead and look into what is currently the round of 16 stage currently. So as I mentioned, though, there is a few group stage games left here, but officially in the first three matchups, kind of almost you could say like the first A quadrant, the three matchups decided so far is the Netherlands versus the USA, Argentina against Australia, Japan against Croatia. I think we also have France versus Poland. I'm trying to bring the bracket down here. I don't like when this freezes up. Let me see here. Let me see if I can pull up the whole thing here, if I can. Not for Pete's.
I have it pulled up. Where was it that you left off?
Yeah, so it was the last one I said was France against Poland. I was trying to bring up if there was any other.
We have England versus Senegal and Morocco versus Spain are the other two that have been decided.
Okay, so and then of course we got still some of the group stages to be decided as well. And from what I can tell is trying to see here for the remaining ones here. So it kind of seems that almost every bracket outside Netherlands and Senegal, so almost seems like there's just like the chess matches in place to see who is the last one, because as far as I see, it kind of seems like almost every one of them is decided from Group A all the way through Group H. So maybe they're just
looking at G and H, which are the two that still have to play tomorrow. I mean, it's
Oh, okay.
the number one is pretty much decided. Brazil
Brazil
and
and
Portugal both have 6 points in their groups, and second place has 3.
between Switzerland and Ghana then for the last two
Yeah,
here.
and then
So
there's Cameroon and Serbia in Group G have 1 point each, and then South Korea and Uruguay both have 1 point each. So those groups are almost identical looking at the
absolutely
same
right.
goal differential all the way down them too. So
Mhm. Well, it's certainly going to be interesting come the round of 16 starting on Saturday. And I just looked up with the competitive streak between the United States against Netherlands. The United States has played Netherlands 5 times in their history. I think all international friendlies. Their only win against the Netherlands came in June of 2015 when they won by the score of 4-3 against the Netherlands in 2015. They lost the previous 4 matchups by a goal differential. Let me see here of 7-1. They got shut out in 3 of their previous matchups before they took down the Netherlands in 2015. So everyone's saying though Christian Pulisic is hopefully going to be back on Saturday after kind of getting tied up with that goaltender on that sealing goal against Iran. But how do you kind of see the United States' chances of at least maybe reaching the quarterfinals against Netherlands, as well as kind of seeing how the other matchups play out?
I think that we have a good chance to advance because our back line, like our defense, has been amazing. Only one goal allowed the whole time, and it was a penalty kick. And that penalty kick, Matt Turner got his hands on it too. So it's not like he just he could have stopped it if it wasn't like so much power behind it. But that's the only goal let up by the U.S. So we didn't let England score. The only goal that we gave up was that penalty kick. So I think that we can. I think we can win. We just have to get probably a little bit more creative with our scoring, because it hasn't been there really at all. Just 2 goals in the World Cup so far. So I think we can do it though, especially if Pulisic is able to play.
Mm-hmm. Especially considering a tall task going against the Netherlands. I was just looking up here; they have scored 5 goals and only given up 1 themselves. So certainly it's going to be a tough challenge going against the Netherlands, who won their Group A stage in that one there. So it's going to be interesting to see with the other matchups as well. As I mentioned, I love that Croatia is back in as well. You know, I was kind of seeing how they performed in 2018. A lot of defied the experts during that stretch run. That'll be a bit of a challenge though, going against Japan, and of course they'll decide whoever's going to match up against them between those final 2 groups against them. That's set there. And then what were the other ones? As we mentioned, there was France and Poland, and then who was the other 2 that were decided?
England and Senegal, and Morocco and Spain.
Yeah, it probably would be interesting to see if Morocco and Spain. I'm certainly thinking Spain's probably going to take care of that business there, but France and Poland could certainly be a good one on December 4th with those 2 going at it.
Yeah, we got Charlotte FC player Karol Swiderski in the round of 16.
And speaking of, I got to sport this as well. Charlotte FC shirt.
I have where's it?
Yeah,
right there is from the inaugural match.
Oh, right.
Is what, nice. You can't really see the whole thing, but yeah, it's a little sign that I got.
Nice. Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that he can shine some magic there for Poland against a tough challenge in France. But any other interesting things about the World Cup that I forgot to mention, or you wanted to bring up before we move on to our next topic?
I believe in I think it was Brazil's first game. There was like a crazy goal score. I think it was 2 actually from Richarlison. He had 2 like crazy goals that he scored that were just like unbelievable, like how he scored them, and he did 2 of them. I'll have to try and find the.
Yeah, here I'll see if
I believe it was 2 of them.
If I give you my time,
yeah, I'm gonna see if I can try and play the highlight here quick. Of course, just waiting for commercials to stop here, but let me see if
Because I want to say I heard someone say or like saw somewhere that it was two of them, but it may have just been one, and it was just a crazy one.
here we go. Just 1 second here. I'm gonna raise the volume here. Not probably as loud as Pulisic's, but here we go.
Here's Damar. Vinicius Jr. created the goal, running in. Richarlison.
This is absolutely sensational. Richarlison, he actually miscontrols the first one, and when doing that, it pops it up, and then just the inventiveness over his shoulder, the scissor kick in the corner, unbelievable to the net. My, oh my. Look at that. Picture perfect. Pick it up in the back of the net. That's Samba soccer at its absolute best. It's the first one, it was reactive. This one is spectacular. The Brazilian fans coming to life now, absolutely loving it. Richarlison.
Yeah, just kind of they were saying just how epic that scissor kick goal was when he did that against Serbia. I think was that matchup when he dropped that goal there.
Yeah, that was on Thanksgiving Day too.
Awesome. Yeah, just I mean, watching that highlight, there was no way I could accomplish a feat like that when I played soccer as much as I did. I played mostly defense when I played soccer. I hardly played enough offense, but certainly a fantastic moment there. And probably other than that, any other moments or anything else from that group stage?
I actually did in I think it was today a press conference from the U.S. men's team. They were asking Pulisic about that goal and how he finally got his Landon Donovan moment from when Landon Donovan sent us to the round of 16 against who was that against?
Oh,
in 2010.
Oh man, that's a good question.
Oh, I cannot remember. But they asked him that, and he went on to say that he hopes he hasn't had that moment yet. So in his mind, that hasn't happened for him yet. So
it was Algeria.
I like hearing that. So he's not Algeria. That's what it was. He's not satisfied with just scoring that one in the group stage. He wants to have an even bigger moment.
That's going to be that's a nice attitude to have, especially going against the Netherlands in the next round there. And I certainly was impressed by the.
Yeah, and if we beat the Netherlands, it looks like we'd have to play Argentina too. So that's going to be a tough task. That's a tall task right there. So
Argentina there, that will be a interesting one to see nonetheless. But I would say though,
I don't want to count out Australia though. That's who Argentina has to play in the first round. I don't want to count them out, but
absolutely,
it's looking like in terms of favorites, it's looking like it's going to be Argentina if we're able to beat the Netherlands.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was Australia's mark? Australia scored 3 goals but gave up 4, so that's going to be a tough sledding for them going against Argentina. Argentina scored 5 goals, so only giving up 2 in their 3 games. So that's going to be an interesting game between those two in the first round of 16. But again, interesting. We'll head into the round of 16 over this weekend. And before we hit into our next one, I was going to say, any other amazing moments that you've seen? Certainly, I was impressed with the level of goaltending when I saw in some of the early games of the group stage. I think I mentioned you today in class. I don't know if it was the one game like in Tunisia versus Denmark or whatever, but it was like
it was Mexico. Ochoa, their goalkeeper.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. And I think he's like 38 or 39.
Yeah.
So he's up there. He just He's 37. I mean, he always shows up for the World Cup, but they actually got eliminated for what I think it was 6 straight World Cups. They had made the run to 16, and this one ended that.
You have just lost out to Poland there. Both Poland and Mexico were right even at 4 matches, but Poland held.
Yeah, it was on a goal differential by 1.
Right. That's a painful way to go out there. But I think if that's going to do it for us for the FIFA World Cup, unless you have any other thoughts heading into the round of 16.
That should be about it for the World Cup for now.
Yeah, we'll probably maybe go a little more later, probably just see who we projected into the final stage here. But switching gears now, though, it's going to be a crazy weekend for also another reason as well. Certainly, last 2 weekends in college football were crazy, and conference championship week is indeed this weekend. But before we actually touch base on this, we have to certainly go over some of the crazy coaching hirings and firings we've seen so far. Probably one of the more shocking ones that I saw was Wisconsin dropping Paul Chryst as their head coach and hiring Cincinnati's Luke Fickell as their next head coach. That was a shocker to me when they got rid of Paul Chryst. But when I noticed that David Shaw resigned at Stanford after his tenure there, I certainly think that Paul Chryst could easily maybe slide into that Stanford job after a pretty nice career that he had in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I was surprised that Fickell went to Wisconsin because he's turned down like other big offers before this year. So I thought that he was just going to hold out for Ohio State, which in my opinion, Ohio State probably should have got him because I'm not very high on Ryan Day.
Ryan Day is certainly last 2 months I've been hearing Michigan alums, Rich Eisen and everybody else kind of saying their piece on Ryan Day. I know they kind of say they want the rivalry back between both of their schools, but certainly, John Harbaugh's done a tremendous job. But watching that game in that rivalry weekend last weekend, I will say this: Ohio State's defense got shredded in that game. They missed several tackles that could have easily changed the course of that game. And
that was without Michigan's Heisman candidate running back.
Blake Corum, right?
Blake Corum actually is going to miss the rest of the year now too because he's going to have knee surgery.
It's going to be interesting for Michigan going against either TCU or whoever's going to be there. And I'm actually just going to quickly pull up the conference game schedules as well. It's just kind of
if the favorites win, then we should already have the picture for the playoffs because it should be Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and USC. Sorry.
I was going to.
Which even if TCU loses, they deserve a spot.
I agree. I was even going to ask you about
they've already beat Kansas State once, and that's who they're playing.
I was going to say when the committee released that on Tuesday, were you surprised about maybe Ohio State and Alabama's placement, or for either of the top 4 teams?
Not really. I mean, it was about what I expected. I mean, you could make the argument that Tennessee should be ahead of Alabama because they have the head-to-head game to reference there, and then not only that, one of Alabama's losses was to a team that Tennessee beat by like 30 or something like that at on the road.
Yeah, and this could be me just being a homer as well. I know a lot of people are kind of egging that Alabama should get in, but I'm just thinking for once Alabama needs to be out. I certainly smell.
There's no reason they should be in.
Right. I mean, just
if they wanted to be in it, don't lose to Tennessee. Don't give up 52 points to Tennessee, and don't lose to LSU.
I just had a funny feeling.
LSU lost to Texas A&M. If you can't beat them, you don't deserve to be in the playoff.
And you almost nearly lost to Texas earlier in the season as well when we
especially you can get a pass if it's one loss on your season to LSU who lost to A&M. I want to keep bringing that up because A&M is not good.
Right.
But if that's your second loss, you don't have a pitch to the committee and be like, this is why we deserve to be in. You just don't. And I think they showed us that too. where it's like if one of these teams drops a game, like if USC like drops the game, it's going to be Ohio State over Alabama.
It's going to be interesting especially as I was just kind of really seeing the way the SEC was going into this year. I just kind of thought Alabama was right for the picking, especially after what I saw last year and just kind of really seeing Nick Saban kind of lose his touch there. But I'm making no mistakes for Jimbo Fisher as well, even though that was a solid win against LSU on rivalry weekend. Texas A&M has a lot of things to clean up this offseason, knowing they got #1 recruiting class coming into that program next year.
Yeah, I mean, they have too much talent on that team for them to be like what did they finish 5-7?
5-7,
I think. Yeah. Like
Unacceptable.
were they top? I think they were top 5 preseason ranked, or if they weren't 5, they were 6 or something. Like they were very highly ranked. A lot of hype coming into the year. A ton of talent. The #1 class. I believe they had the #1 ranked class ever of any recruiting class ever, in just to go 5-6 in their first season.
It's a little unacceptable for Jimbo Fisher there, but let's go ahead and just kind of dissect this right now. So tomorrow is going to be a huge matchup against Utah and USC. I'm certainly loving what Caleb Williams has done with that program at USC. You know, we're certainly talking about
he'll be the #1 pick in the draft, and not this year, obviously, but
agree.
next year.
What I love as well is just especially as I mentioned in one of our last broadcasts as well, just kind of seeing how a lot of players really use that transfer portal to their advantage, knowing that Jordan Addison played with Kenny Pickett last year at the University of Pittsburgh. He immediately goes to USC and follows it up with another tremendous year. I think he's going to be a prized prospect and wide receiver, whoever's going to nab him. But after that matchup on Friday, of course, a big matchup against Kansas State and TCU. Max Duggan and TCU take care of their business. I think that's going to be a fun game against Michigan in the semifinal if Michigan handles their business against Purdue. I was impressed at how Purdue kind of righted the ship. They were like 5-4 at one point, and they've won their last 3 games with Aiden O'Connell, but I just don't know if you can go toe-to-toe with how good Michigan has been defensively.
Purdue is under – what is their coach? Braum? Is Braum there?
Yeah, Braum. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's them. They are 3-0 against top 5 teams.
Well, we could see.
So maybe there's something there.
We could see, perhaps. I would love to see a shakeup. I mean, I don't think they got enough firepower. But J.J. McCarthy, what I will say about that last game, he only completed 50% of his passes. He only was 12 of 24, and I know he had his backups behind Corum do well for him behind their offensive line. Their defense did an exceptional job shutting down C.J. Stroud in that Ohio State offense. But after you just brought that up, we'll perhaps wait to see if Aiden O'Connell has a magic moment here against Michigan in that one. Moving on to one of the other matchups, this is going to be a really questionable matchup, especially for me after seeing what's kind of happened to both these teams. Number 9 ranked Clemson against number 23 North Carolina. 2 bad losses by North Carolina in back-to-back weeks. The one I don't blame on Drake May. That pass that he threw into the end zone against Georgia Tech, that should have been caught. Game over, game sealed. That would have been a win for North Carolina. And then losing a triple overtime against NC State in their last game, that's a bitter pill to swallow for Mac Brown going into the ACC championship game. But knowing Clemson lost to South Carolina, 2 costly turnovers on special teams.
What a 2 weeks for South Carolina, too.
Yeah.
Beating Tennessee, blowing them out, and then they're able to beat Clemson for the first time since 2013.
Amazing run that Spencer Rattler's been on. I mean, I was trying to wait for that Spencer Rattler this entire season, but the last few weeks he's starting to find his game a little bit heading into next year, hopefully, for Shane Beamer in South Carolina. But then just kind of wrapping it up with some of the other kind of lower ones here. Of course, LSU going against Georgia. Georgia is going to be easy runaways, I think, in that one.
Yeah,
LSU
especially with how LSU looked to get. If you, I've brought up many times, I'm sorry to keep like dissing A&M like this
No,
and in turn
you're
dissing
fine.
LSU,
You're
but
fine.
LSU deserves it. If you
They do.
lose to
They
a
do.
going into the game a 4-7 team when you had an outside chance at making the playoff,
There you go.
you don't even come close to deserving it. You already had 2 losses, so it was going to be a stretch. You had to beat Georgia to even be considered, but you don't even get to that point. And maybe they were just overlooking A&M and were like, oh, we can beat them and we can maybe – like we can just game plan for Georgia. But no, you shouldn't be losing to Texas A&M if you are the level that LSU was at that point. Like if you are going to the conference championship game, you shouldn't be losing to a team like A&M.
Exactly. And just, certainly Brian Kelly, kind of going into his first year, I felt that there was going to be some challenges for him at LSU. I certainly think he's done a respectable job in his first year, especially replacing Ed Orgeron as head coach is a huge task. And I think Kelly has done well. I mean, I just don't know how more successful he's going to be than from Ed Orgeron and how much they're going to be willing to bill him. And then just kind of previewing some of the other ones as well. Certainly the AAC championship game is going to be a huge one. No longer Cincinnati, and this one's going to be number 22 ranked UCF against number 18 Tulane. I'm going to certainly catch this one, going with Michael Pratt and Tulane, trying to kind of get another 12-win season. I think replicating what they did in 1998. I think they were undefeated that year in 98 when they finished 12-0. I'm kind of really hoping that Tulane can capture similar magic with that game against UCF. We also have Coastal Carolina at Troy, the Sun Belt Championship game. We got Toledo versus Ohio for the MAC Championship game, and then Fresno State and Boise State for the Mountain West Championship game, and then wrapping it up with the Conference USA Championship game. That will be tomorrow night against North Texas and UTSA. But I think as well, just kind of seeing these matchups and also some of the recent hirings and firings as well. One of the other interesting names I saw seems like Dan Lanning's coaching tree is kind of figuring itself out. It was like that Kenny Dillingham being hired at Arizona State, replacing after Herm Edwards let go. We were talking about how Bo Nix looked really good under Lanning in his first year, and certainly they're hoping that Dillingham's going to hopefully revive Arizona State next year.
Yeah. I'd also heard apparently it was a rumor that I think some recruits were told that Deion Sanders would have made a decision if he is going to choose another school this weekend. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was Colorado, USF, and Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, what are your thoughts on that? Either Colorado, USF, or Cincinnati? If you were Deion, which one would you?
I mean, I think it's got to be Cincinnati. Like, obviously, there's no reason to go to USF at all. No. And if you want to go to like a school and be a part of a bigger conference, with Cincinnati going to the Big 12 next year and Colorado already being in the Pac-12, why would you not pick the program that's sitting in a much better spot right now in Cincinnati?
Especially with such a stronghold as well, with Luke Fickell really building that program into strong relevancy. I'm just looking at South Florida. Last 4 years, just really dismal. They were 1-11 this year, 2-10 last year, 1-8 in 2020, and 4-8 in 2019. So, I mean, that's just a really, dismal program there. And everyone was kind of talking about how Mel Tucker basically screwed up Colorado in his 1 year there. I'm just looking at Colorado right now. Last few years, probably their only bright spot was when they finished only 4-2 in 6 games during the COVID shortened year in 2020. They were 1-11 this year. Both South Florida and Colorado were 1-11. They were Colorado was 4-8 in 2021, and then they were 5-7 in 2019, 2018, and 2017. Their last season before that was in 2016 when they finished 10-4. But certainly just 2 programs that certainly need a lot of help in Colorado and South Florida. And I'm tending to agree with you there. I mean, Cincinnati just in such a great position, especially going to a bigger conference themselves next year. I mean, if Deion's willing to pull the plug on Jackson State, I think he's done a tremendous job there. I love how he and Eddie George kind of went to Jackson State, and I think Eddie George is at Tennessee State, just reviving those FCS programs and building them back up to prominence from where they were years ago. I just love the fact that some of those NFL stars are kind of getting into the mix like that.
Yeah, it's cool to see that. Which, I mean, you got to think with if he were to leave Jackson State,
Mhm.
there's some transfer portal guys happening. And there's no way that one, his son is going to stay there. Two, Travis Hunter, there's no way he stays there. And then I believe they had another pretty high profile recruit, or a couple of them, that are most definitely going to leave if Dion leaves. Because that's where they didn't go there for Jackson State. They went there for Deion Sanders. And
Exactly.
I think everyone knows that.
Mhm. I'm certainly hoping that, someone's going to hopefully replace like some of the legends. One of the great legends I always think of FCS legends is Eddie Robinson, what he did at Grambling University when he was there from the 50s through I think like the 70s or 80s is when he stayed, but just a legendary career there at Grambling that he had as his head coach. I think what he did for that program is incredible, but I would love to see someone replicate his success that he had at Grambling. I'm kind of getting sick of seeing North Dakota State always kind of being the big dogs, even though it's a different thing. It's the swag.
It doesn't even have to be North Dakota State. South Dakota State and North Dakota State pretty much run that.
I know, exactly. It's going to be interesting to see any FCS products going into this year's NFL draft. But just kind of sticking with the college football realm here for just another second here. Certainly got to shout out to some of the bigger award winners. We were just talking about Caleb Williams being the front runner for the Heisman Trophy. He's certainly probably going to win it this year. But Michael Penix, though, a tremendous year at the University of Washington, 4,354 yards passing and 29 passing touchdowns, leading Washington to a 10-win season this year. Congrats to him. Dwayne McBride from UAB will win the rushing title for college football this year with 1,713 yards and 19 touchdowns. And then as far as probably you could say the three leading receivers, you could say Rashee Rice from SMU, Nathaniel Dell from Houston, and a tremendous year from Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. And kind of what I was mentioning with my co-host on Tuesday, Griff Barlow, when I was meeting with him for a little while, what I would love to do is come closer to the NFL draft, not so much, like right on draft day. I want everyone to enjoy the draft and not, have a broadcast that night, but possibly the week before, kind of as I did last year when I pulled up like all 5 or 6 of the CBS sports analysts of who they think could be picked in the first round. We might do something similar to that, as we kind of see if we can get a big group broadcast around that point. But I'm certainly looking forward to seeing the bowl games this year and seeing how these games go on Saturday.
Yeah, this is best time of the year for college football. We're almost to bowl season. Just conference championship games right now, and then we're into bowl season.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to say, before we move on, though, any other big news from college football you heard or anything we missed?
Not that I think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Oh, we completely skipped over Hugh Freeze getting hired at Auburn.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we totally missed that. They're just apart from me from saying this about the Liberty program, but Liberty, they had a bad loss to UConn a few weeks ago when I saw that there. And, certainly I know everyone's kind of in the loop on whatever is going to happen in the mind of Lane Kiffin, wherever he's going to go. And, certainly, I mean, I commend that Auburn has hired Hugh Freeze as their head coach. Certainly, drastic change for their program, and certainly a big power shift going on in the SEC right now. Georgia, of course, probably become the new Alabama under Kirby Smart right now, and now everyone's going to kind of be looking up to them as catching them as those guys. But the way that I see the SEC, I just kind of see this conference just kind of really just showing its true colors now that, knowing that Nick Saban at Alabama has kind of been, slighted this year. I'm not saying that, he's been figured out completely. I mean, he only lost his 2 games by a combined 4 points. But just seeing Saban just being frustrated at Alabama this year, kind of seeing him on the sidelines, it's the same thing that I always say about Belichick. I think it's just time for, just a full switch with these programs, and certainly the SEC schools like South Carolina, LSU, and now Auburn with hiring Hugh Freeze. It's just nice to see a new changing of the guard and trying to, catch on Nick Saban with, his tenure at Alabama starting to be a little shaky at best.
Yeah, in the past 2 years, Alabama's gotten a little bit undisciplined with their penalties. They've had a lot of them.
They have, and I think that's probably going to go ahead and do it for us here as far as college football. It's going to be unique with once the bowl games are going to be released over the next few days, especially once conference championships are done here. But what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to switch gears here, and we're actually going to switch roles here. Actually, is I'm going to hand this off to Billy here, kind of going into our NFL conversation here. We're going to switch roles. Billy's going to kind of just ask me the questions here, and I'm going to cut him a little break for a while. So, Billy, the floor is yours. If you want to ask me any questions, you can.
Okay, let me look at some matchups that we might have coming up that I could get some of. Oh, I just saw this just because I saw the team's name. What are your thoughts on the Zach Wilson benching and what was it, Mike White starting in his play and it being better than Zach Wilson's?
To me, I always thought Zach Wilson at BYU. I know BYU has had a tremendous history, of really just kind of going through quarterbacks. Of course, you had Jim McMahon and Steve Young back-to-back there at BYU. Ty Detmer, of course, went there, and certainly several others. And I like Zach Wilson at BYU. I thought, he would immediately change the course of the Jets. I mean, they've been just without a quarterback for so long. But based on what I've been hearing from Rich Eisen and everybody else is that, certainly there's a divide in the Jets locker room this year, but you certainly felt a different energy. Breece Hall came out, and he was a strong contender there as a rookie. I know Mike White had that one good game against Cincinnati last year to hang his head on before he absolutely shredded Chicago's, defense, whatever you want to call it. That's putting it lightly to Chicago's defense, the way they've been shredded this year. But seeing Garrett Wilson come up huge in that game, Elijah Moore starting to finally get involved. I think it's an untapped offense that Robert Saleh has in itself right now. But as I've said for so many years, the way that I think the Jets need to handle this situation needs to be far better than what they handled their situation after they got rid of Chad Pennington in 2007. You signed Brett Favre in 2008. It was a 1 year then gone for Brett Favre, and then Mark Sanchez was after him. I think the Jets, they have had so many ways where they've screwed the pooch with their quarterback situation, and I think they need to handle this one right between Mike White and Zach Wilson here. Otherwise, I think, people are saying that Saleh can lose the team. I don't think he can lose the team. I just think he's going to lose a chance to see, where the progress of this team is. I mean, you're sitting at 7-4 right now. You got a huge game against the Minnesota Vikings this weekend, but I think Mike White can go toe-to-toe with Kirk Cousins, but I just don't know if he's going to have a repeat performance as he had against Chicago. But I give the Jets at least a decent chance to beat Minnesota, and certainly Mike White in just this one game has certainly looked better than Zach Wilson has all year.
And do you see them? I mean, there's limited quarterback options that you can go out and get, especially with them being a good team. You can't really go out and draft a good one out there, like a high-end one. And there's not too many options free agency-wise. What do you think they'll end up doing out there? I could see them signing Jimmy Garoppolo.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would probably be their easiest option.
The problem I would have probably, with that there, especially, if Mike White does well this year, I think, if Mike White is a starter for the rest of the year, let's just say, for example, if he goes 4-3 in his final 7 games here, that puts the Jets at 11 and strike that. That would be 6 games. So reverse course there. So just say he just splits the last 3, or he goes 4-2. So either they finish 10-6, or they finish 11 and why am I screwing the math right now?
10-7 or 11-6.
So 10-7 or 11-6. That's what I was gonna say there. But I just think if you let Mike White run the gambit for the rest of the year, I mean, that's the way that I would probably slice it, unless he either gets hurt, or if he just turns in a really bad performance against somebody. I just think the way that I almost compare this as well, people really forget about this, but when Richard Todd was the starter for the Jets way back in the 1980s. In 1982, when he led the Jets the AFC Championship game that year, I know everybody criticizes him for the 3 or 4 interceptions with A.J. Dewey, and everybody has bad dreams of A.J. Dewey as Jets fans there. But the following draft, though, in 83, you looked at that draft outside of the quarterbacks, of course, with Jim Kelly and Jay Marino and everybody. You had a chance to pluck a really good receiver or a really good defensive player in that first or second round with your pick. And what do? You draft Ken O'Brien as a quarterback that season in 1983. And you basically say to Richard Todd, we still like you, but we're going to draft this guy, and he's probably going to be your heir apparent in a year or two. And that rocked Todd's confidence. They went from going to the AFC Championship in 82, and 83 they finished 7-9. And what I don't want them to do is say to Mike White or Zach Wilson in this case, saying if one of you screws up, we're easily going to pull the plug, and it's another crazed quarterback situation. It just kind of, as I said, it always seems like the Jets kind of find countless ways whether to screw with or whether it's to mess up their quarterback situation so much that they just haven't been able to find anybody since Joe Namath.
Yeah, it just seems like even with you don't necessarily need the best quarterback to win with.
Right.
There's just guys out there that they just make the team play better, or the team rallies around them. It seems like even Mike White looked good, but it seems like literally anyone but Zach Wilson is bringing that team together at quarterback. And then there's several examples, that's why I think also if they were to go get a quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo would be probably their best option, because it just seems like the 49ers play better whenever he's at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously there's ties for him to go to New York because Robert Saleh is used to be in San Francisco, even though he's on the defensive side.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you want to look in your division with Washington.
Yeah.
Sure, Carson Wentz on paper is better than Taylor Heineke, but that team plays way better. It just seems like everything goes their way when it's Taylor Heineke on the field.
Mm-hmm. Washington has certainly turned some things around, especially after that disappointing start. The way that I slice it for Washington here is, do I see Heineke as a long-term solution for them? Not yet. I don't see him as a franchise quarterback here, but as a guy that could just fill the shoes for a few years and just kind of really hone his craft there, that's the way that I kind of slice it as well with that whole Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley situation with the Giants. Certainly Washington doesn't probably have a whole lot of contract issues at hand, because Heineke you could pay almost like on a base contract. I know you have Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and those guys for Washington offensively for him to throw to. But as far as the Giants are concerned, I would just kind of monitor it the same way, almost just give Jones or give Barkley a 3 or 4 year deal at best, and just either, try and build the team around one of them. And if it doesn't work out with Jones either next year or the year before, you got to pluck the talents of, quarterbacks here. I mean, we were just talking about how possibly deep this NFL draft might be quarterbacks wise, and maybe next year as well. We were just saying Caleb Williams is probably going to be a first round draft choice. Drake May certainly trending up in 2024 as well. So, I mean, there's certainly a chance for someone to right the ship, but I'm not ready to budge in on Daniel Jones or give Taylor Heineke, a deal that's going to say to them, you're our franchise quarterback, over the next 5, 10, 15 years. I just don't see it for
Yeah,
either of them.
those guys seems like the best deal or best way for both sides is a 2 or 3 year deal to where if it's obvious after the first year or second year, it's like, yeah, this isn't going to work, then you can draft a quarterback and you still have them on the roster. Like, they're not bad quarterbacks. You can have them on the roster with your rookie there, or like they're not bad, so you could possibly move them because other teams will be looking for quarterbacks and they could use them. So it's not like a contract that can't be moved or that you have to keep and just eat it. Get a short-term deal that would benefit both sides, and if it works out, then hey, you can give them that deal that they deserve. If it doesn't, then hey, just say, hey, it didn't work out. We'll keep you on the roster. You can help develop this guy, or hey, we'll send you off somewhere else so you can play. They need a quarterback. It's a 2 or 3 year deal. Either one of those guys, it would work perfect for either of them.
I certainly think, though, also kind of touching on this as well, I certainly think, if things work out for both teams, I think both teams are playing each other this weekend, if I remember correctly. I almost thought the Giants
I believe
played
so.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, they are playing this weekend.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. Brian Dable and Ron Rivera going at it this week. I'm kind of hoping the Giants can finally slump themselves out of this losing streak, but hopefully if Ron Rivera stays, for this year, I think he can at least save his job for another year, and certainly Dable and Shane have, certainly piloted the Giants in the right direction there. But possibly moving out of this conversation, you got another question for me to dissect?
What was hold on, I had one. I just lost it for a second. Hold on. Where was it? Oh yeah, Deshaun Watson returns against the Texans this week. Do you think that it is possible for the Browns to maybe get a spark from improved quarterback play and make a push for the playoffs?
I'll tell you
They're
this
sitting at
right
4-7
now.
right now.
I'll tell you this right now. I have really commended the job that Jacoby Brissett has done so far this season for Cleveland, even though the 4-7 record, like I said early in the season, that record could easily be switched. I mean, I just think, Brissett, he doesn't have as much experience as Watson has, and he was just really thrown into a bad situation with just kind of all the roster moves and upheaval that Cleveland has had so far this year. But if I see Deshaun Watson play as bad as he did, even though he only was granted like 1 or 2 series in that first preseason game that he had this year, but to me, I think Deshaun Watson has to right a lot of wrongs, especially knowing that, his whole off the field moves. Sorry, I had something in my mouth there. But just all the offseason moves and all the offseason drama that has surrounded him over the last 2 years, what I'm almost anticipating is I almost don't want him to see him as bad as what Le'Veon Bell was after Bell basically, missed the entire 2018 season because he was just tied up with contract negotiations with the Steelers. I know that's completely different because he was not involved in any domestic violence or anything, but if Watson looks like a shell of himself, if he returns and over this final 6-game stretch to end the season for Cleveland, I think as ownership and as well as, Andrew Berry for their general manager right now, I feel really bad for Kevin Stefanski in this situation. I know he could easily be the scapegoat in this situation. And I think
they still are going to owe him after this year $249 million guaranteed because his cap hit this year was only $1 million.
That's right.
So they still owe him 249 of that $250 million fully guaranteed deal.
I just think Stefanski, he was thrown almost into a no-win situation here. And this is why I almost compared this to that whole Steve Nash situation that he was thrown into as well. It's like, I know it's a totally different thing here as well, but, Cleveland essentially lost my respect when they gave Deshaun Watson the max deal, a max contract of any quarterback in NFL history.
And fully guaranteed.
Something just seems so fishy to me when they decided to make him the richest contract in NBA history. And then, you see the thing that happened with the Nets with Durant and Irving and those guys just really relinquishing their power, saying, we don't need a coach or we don't need a GM, saying to us what we need to do there. I think it's like that same toxicity in these organizations that's kind of really just shown what their true colors are. And I go all the way up to Jimmy Haslam and Joe Tsai, kind of calling out both their owners of saying, you better right the ship for both these franchises or the fan bases. They're going to be breathing right down your throats right now with the way that both of them have looked, over the last few years with all the PR drama and everything going on between those two.
Yeah, that can end up being a disaster on both sides with how much money they have committed to their what are supposed to be star players.
Absolutely. But yeah, just probably I'm moving on to your next question.
Let me look through the matchups here, see if I can get any. Oh yeah, we got Seahawks Rams. This Rams team, it's bad.
It's
like
horrible.
In your opinion, what's the main problem? Where did they go wrong in your opinion with this team?
This is something that I said to Griff on Tuesday night when I had him on my broadcast. I said to him, what I just don't understand, especially as far as like Les Snead goes, dumping all those draft picks for Matthew Stafford and those guys. I mean, I'm praying for Matthew Stafford right now, especially, knowing that how bad that concussion has kind of been revealed that he suffered a few weeks ago. But I saw right through it, especially knowing that Stafford, I know he had a great run to the Super Bowl last year, but he was still that, wildly kind of taking chances, taking risks quarterback he was last year as he was this year. I mean, just, the way that his relationship.
He led the league in interceptions last year.
Yeah, and the way his chemistry with Cooper Kupp, it just so reminded me of when Cam Newton kind of relied so much on Steve Smith early on in his career when he was there. He never really looked much to throw to any other target there, but I'm like, you got Van Jefferson, you have at least a good tight end in Tyler Higbee, but their running game has been non-existent ever since Todd Gurley left. They have tried Cam Akers, they've tried Darrell Henderson, they've tried all these guys, and I say it's almost like you put.
They just they waived Darrell Henderson, didn't they?
I think so, yeah. But just like the way that I slice it as well is just like you almost think of the opposite of what it is in Kansas City. I know Kansas City has not had much of a running game for Patrick Mahomes, but it's almost like if you put at least maybe like an above average or a running back that can just get you like 900 or 1,000 yards max. It doesn't need to be an elite guy as Gurley was for 2 or 3 years as he was with the Rams before injuries took him down. But just imagine how much of a running game would work out for the Rams. And what Jared Goff is doing right now in Detroit is amazing with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams having a career year in Detroit. I did not see that running back duo happening this year until, basically they just ran wild over the last few weeks. But that's what the Rams are severely lacking right now as far as an offense.
Yeah, speaking of the Lions and Jamal Williams specifically, what I love about that, like his touchdowns, I believe he's on at like 13 on the year. I think like 9 or 10 of them are like have came within the 5-yard line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he has like 7 1-yard touchdown runs, which is crazy.
It's huge for Detroit as well. I mean, I just love the way that Dan Campbell and company have really kind of righted the ship. I mean, to me, their biggest thing, it's like maybe just switch it up. If you said that, give me the Rams defense or the Broncos defense on Detroit right now, I can see a team that's easily switched the record and chasing the Vikings down right now. But I think their offense is set. I have no questions on Jared Goff anymore. I think he has certainly rewritten his career after a couple of dismal years that he had with the Rams and that whatever you want to call it, controversy that he and Sean McVay had. He's righted his career in Detroit right now. Just fix that defense and you are set offensively, in my opinion.
Yeah, Goff looks good like that, but that defense is like very bad. Like they're a playoff team with a like top like fringe top 10 defense, which I mean that is you're expected probably to be a playoff team with a defense that good. Not when you're the Colts, though.
No,
The Colts, they have that kind of defense. But if you combine the Colts and the Lions, that's a really good team.
That is a good team. That is.
But you can't do that. So now we got two teams that aren't very good, but are very good on one side of the ball specifically.
Just kind of switching gears a little bit. I'm going to take over for just a second here before I hand this back to you. But certainly just kind of seeing the way that Indianapolis and Jacksonville has happened. Jacksonville survived a thrill where I saw that missed field goal from Justin Tucker. He tried to match.
What was that from? How far?
Record.
How deep was that?
I think 67 when he tried to hit it again. When he tried to
that would have been the record, isn't it? Because I think 66 is what he hit against Detroit last year to set the record. So he would have
probably right. Yeah, I thought it was
so he would have broke his own record and just barely missed it.
I don't think anybody has as much of a leg as Justin Tucker has. Just incredible range there, but just hitting on Indianapolis and Jacksonville right now. Certainly Indianapolis. I mean, Jeff Saturday. I know there was bad clock management against the Pittsburgh Steelers last Monday Night Football and their loss, but the way that I just kind of see the AFC South right now, I know that Derrick Henry has been running wild. Tennessee's just had a really kind of quiet once again year this year, but everyone's kind of been going about in recent weeks about Lovie Smith sitting at 1-9-1, and I'm just kind of just pegging that question once again at Nick Caserio and that organization right now. I mean, if they go 1-15-1, just say if they lose their last 6 games, I mean, if they dump Lovie Smith, it's time for a whole revamp of the Texans organization right now. I'm just so
that team needs to be sold if they fire the coach in back-to-back years when it's their fault. Like it's not the coach, it's franchise's fault, not the coach's fault. They knew what they were getting hired into.
Caserio, in my opinion, is probably one of the worst GMs I've ever seen, to be completely honest with you. He has almost no power, and he's just sitting there quiet right now. No one's asking him in the media. I hardly even see a press conference from him. It's almost like Stephen A. with Leon Rose and William Wesley.
I don't think I've ever heard any quotes from him or anything. I don't like.
It's just you see Joe Shane and Brian Dable, going at it in press conferences. Why the hell can Caserio just sit in the wings and just say, what, it is what it is. But it's time for the McNairs just to clean house completely there in Houston. But
I think it's time for them to sell the team, I think is what it is.
I agree. I completely agree there. But switching gears, back to you though, for any other questions you wanted to ask.
I don't think I have any right now that I can think of.
I was just going to kind of briefly look here at some of the other standings right now. Of course, a huge game going on tonight. I think they're actually going on right now between Buffalo and the Patriots.
New England is up 7-3 right now.
Okay, so we'll see what happens, in tonight's matchup there. Mac Jones going against Josh Allen this time around here. But, of course, just briefly talking about the Jets at 7-4. Miami right now with Mike McDaniels. I will say this right now. I think the hidden gem that Miami has really been hiding this offense. I know their defense has been questionable. It's kind of the way I have it almost with the Lions, just kind of fix Miami's defense. And to me, you've got a Super Bowl contender there in the Dolphins there. But I think the one thing their offense has really been hiding so far this year has really just been outside of Hill and Waddle, knowing that you kind of just have those guys underneath that you have to figure out as well. You got that Sherfield and you got Gesicki as well for Mike McDaniels. The way he has run that offense has been a thing of beauty this year with Tua and those guys, and just really developing that chemistry in no time flat. That's what's amazed me so far about Miami's incredible turnaround.
This is completely unrelated to that. I have no idea what Bill Belichick is cooking up, but they just threw a 50-yard touchdown pass to a rookie corner who was in on offense for some reason. Yeah, they brought in Marcus Jones.
Wow,
and they threw a screen pass to him, and he took it all the way.
Hmm.
48 yards. That's interesting.
He was a dual.
Hey,
He
it
was a
works, I
dual.
guess.
Yeah, he was a dual threat defensive back and special teams player at Houston. I think he won um what is it called? I think it's like look at the change that Cordell Patterson, of course, congratulations to him, 9 kick return touchdowns, but making that change from wide receiver to running back, I was amazed at how well he was able to form into that at Atlanta. And they gave him that new role.
Yeah, I just love seeing like these positionless players that just like move around a lot. Like, I mean, really, Cordell Patterson's like the only positionless one, but just to see these like special teams aces to get out there and just play wherever, just get on the field and make an impact.
Absolutely. I'm trying to see here as well. Of course, Baltimore and Cincinnati right at 7-4 will be interesting over the next 6 weeks, deciding with them. Kind of briefly discuss on the AFC West of things. Kansas City just holding firm at 9-2. They will probably be the next team, I think, to go at least 10 wins because I think Minnesota has the Jets, as I mentioned. So Minnesota can get to 10 wins. I think Kansas City has Tennessee this week. So that could be an intriguing matchup between those two. But
Kansas City has Cincinnati, and then Philadelphia has
that's right.
Tennessee.
Yeah, my bad. Cincinnati this week. Yeah, but that'll be a good rematch, AFC Championship game rematch there. As I mentioned, Minnesota in full control in the NFC North. Kind of touched on the NFC West with Seattle and San Francisco, and then of course just a giant toss-up as far as the NFC South is concerned. Just it's amazing knowing just seeing the NFC South this year. Just reminded of 2014 when Carolina finished 7-8-1, win the division that year, and then the next year after that went 15-1 and went all the way to Super Bowl 50.
Yeah, because I think in 2013 the Panthers were 12-4, and then in 2014 they won the division at 7-8-1, and then the next year they went 15-1.
15-1. I think though, trying to think. I think we've really kind of covered quite a bit tonight. It's only kind of just an hour past that we are in. But I was going to say though, any other headlines or anything else that you've kind of seen in the news recently, or anything we probably haven't talked about?
Not that I remember, just off the top of my head. I think we've covered just about everything.
I think so. Yeah, just kind of really catching up on a lot of things really quick tonight, and I'm hoping next week. Next week I'm actually going to take a short little vacation. I'm going to head down to our condo in Longs for a few days. Actually, I'll return on Friday, but certainly talking to my cousins around Christmas, they're hoping we're going to have a huge podcast around then, and I'm going to try and see how big of a podcast we can get there. But certainly it's going to be a long 3 or 4 weeks until then to see how the chess match is going to happen here. But probably exchanging last few item of business here. I was just kind of seeing this just today. It was nice to see the tributes out to Gaylord Perry, who passed away earlier. I think it was yesterday when he passed away, but just an incredible career. I was reading about his legendary spitball that he had in his career, and sort of like how the Major League Baseball outlawed the spitball for so many years, and of course now it's just a pitch you just can't throw anymore. Period. I mean, they completely outlawed all those tricky pitches. But one of the tricks that he would do is that he would put Vaseline either on his belt or on his zipper, I guess, that he had on his pants that way, so he could just rub the Vaseline on it, and he could just make the ball just contort as that dangerous spitball that he had there. Just a nice way to kind of sync the rules to your advantage as far as one of the elite pitchers of the Hall of Fame. Yeah, but just kind of sticking though as far as with everything else, of course, last week started going into the realm of baseball. Oh, I just remembered as well. We were just briefly talking about this in class right now. I just forgot about this. We briefly were discussing about with the college football playoff
Oh yeah,
expanding
the expansion
12 teams. I was going to ask
in
you what
2024.
are your thoughts on that in a few years? How do you think that's going to play out?
I mean, I like it because it brings like the chance for upsets, but like obviously, it's going to be there's going to be more blowouts than upsets in that first round, I think. But there's still the possibility that like because with 12, obviously, what the first four would get a bye, and then I think the way it's set up is that for 5 through 12, the higher seeded team is going to play the home game, and so there's a chance there for upsets to happen. But after that, I mean, it's when you just don't get the. Sorry, my little brother came in here for a second. But
That's good.
but yeah, with there's the chance for upsets with like that first round, and then I think what they were waiting for, the reason that like they just now announced it, I think it was they made a deal with the Rose Bowl to get that involved to where because the semifinals or the quarterfinals and the semifinals are all going to be like the New Year's Six bowls. So you have those 6 games and they'll rotate it there.
Mm-hmm.
So those top four, obviously, there's still the incentive of getting top four. Like with now, the top four is you are in the playoffs, but in the future, the incentive for it is, hey, you don't have to play a first game and have a chance at losing earlier. So I think it still incentivizes being the best, but it still gives these teams that are like, hey, we think we deserve the chance to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So I like expansion for that.
I do too. I think the one way that I'm almost slicing this right now, especially with that decision coming in a few years, the way that I kind of almost slice of how they should almost decide like the 12 teams is I almost think, if you have like a team, say for example, kind of like the way that Tulane was this year, if Tulane has a 10-2 record, or say like anyone from the American Athletic Conference has 10 wins, I think that team deserves one of those 10 through 12 spots there. And then probably look at the ACC. You could say Clemson, obviously, they're, probably going to get in most of the time under Dabo Sweeney there. But certainly Florida State coming alive this year with that 9-3 record this year. I mean, who knows how that's going to play out between them two there. And, of course, who knows the future for Mac Brown after a bit of a disappointing last 2 games for the North Carolina Tar Heels. But, I mean, you could see easily, I think, 2 or 3 teams out of the ACC, big power shift as far as the Big 12 is concerned. If TCU and Kansas State and Texas kind of reclaim their magic as those 3 were this year. I mean, certainly the Big 10 is going to pluck those teams as well. Michigan and Ohio State, would be betters as well. I just want to see just, some real transparency, though, and deciding. Understand, you know that you're going to have the weak conferences. You're going to have the MAC. You're going to have the Mountain West. But, just kind of really analyze those 12 teams and really just see, who really are the 12 best teams. Don't make it almost so much like, like you're giving them a chance just to compete. Just it would make a great story. Just, put the teams in that you feel are the best teams, either like in the bottom 6, because if it's going to line up, say like, for example, for the first 4, or you play like 1 through 6, 1 plays 6, 2 plays 5, and 3 plays 4, and then you almost have another quadrant, 7 plays 12, 8 plays 11, and 9 plays 10. I mean that's the way I'd slice it. But I have no idea how the committee's gonna sort of figure out those games or figure for the 12. But just kind of really analyze those teams well, because I just love the fact that knowing how well the transfer portal has been favored so well this year. Just if players just kind of have that similar mindset over the next few years, this is going to turn into a fun college football realm over the next decade or so, with just all these really incredible stories happening this year. That's what I'm most excited about with that expansion, if the committee has that similar mindset.
Yeah, it should be fun with that. So
Mhm.
yeah, I actually need to go. So I don't know if
Oh,
you need to,
sure.
if you're doing anything
No,
else,
no,
but
no,
if you want to
you're
wrap
all
it up
right.
real quick.
I'll go ahead and wrap this up here. But thank you all for joining us here tonight on 100 Years of the NFL, a historical journey, and hopefully Billy and I will see you in about 2 weeks or so. Final exams are going to be tough for both of us here to schedule probably our next one, but hopefully around Christmas we'll see each other once again here. But this is Alex, Chris, and Billy McGee signing off here on episode 3 of 100 Years of the NFL, a historical journey on YouTube. Have a good night, everybody.